Good evening and welcome to the March 11th Safety Committee meeting. First item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes. If you've had a chance to review those, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have visitor public comments. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into chief reports, and we'll start with police dispatch.
Thank you, Mr. Yurchak. Good afternoon. In February, the Emergency Dispatch Department handled 3,525 phone calls. Of that amount, 577 were through the 911 system. There was 1,589 calls for service in February, which is a 12% increase from the same time period last year. Of that 1,589 calls for service, 83% of them were for police purposes and 17% were for fire and EMS reasons. Year to date, we have 3,211 calls for service, which is a 5% increase from the same time period last year. In February, the police department handled 53 traffic crashes compared to 44 in February of 2025. One interesting note about the crashes in February is that they were all property damage. None of the crashes involved any injuries, which is unusual. We had 47 arrests, which is 7 more than February of last year. And we're sitting at 92 arrests for the year, which is the same amount that we had same time period in 2025. Police department had 93 investigative reports in February, which is a 13% increase from February of 2025. And so far year to date, we're sitting at about 10% higher number than we were year to date of 2025. Are there any questions about the statistics?
None for me, thank you.
No, thank you.
In February, the police department attended 5 different training events. I'll just talk about 2 of them real quick. The Field Training Officer Seminar allowed us to get 5 officers certified as field training officers. And that's an important training for our FTOs to go to, just because it gets everybody on the same page as far as how they're instructing the new officers, how they're rating them, and just gives them a lot of information as far as just dealing with different challenges that comes up during a field training officer process. The other one is the I-8000 Basic. That's for the intoxilizer machine. We were able to get 4 officers into this free training and get them certified on the intoxilizer. Our goal is to have all of our officers certified, and generally we sit at that 100% level. Just when we have new officers that get added to the department, it takes a little bit of time to get them all certified, just because that training class is not offered very often in the area. Coming up in the second half of March, the entire department is going to be attending a crisis intervention training, and that'll be conducted by WPD trainers. And just teach the officers about how to handle various calls involving subjects that are either suicidal or going through some sort of a mental health crisis, how to handle those calls, how to deal with different contingencies as far as if it turns into something more extensive, like a barricaded subject, or what the environment is. Just covers a lot of tactics and policy and just different ways to handle those types of calls. So that'll be a really good training for our officers to be able to attend. And then in early April, we'll be hosting an active killer response training. Again, that'll be done by our own Wadsworth Police Department trainers. We have really great current trainers. Some of the SWAT officers are cross-trained and are subject matter experts in being able to instruct these different active killer trainings. A lot of times we use schools or larger businesses, environments that might have a situation where we have somebody that's trying to aggress against a large innocent population. So that'll be in early April, and that'll be a really dynamic hands-on training for the officers to go through. Our new K9 vehicle has finished the upfitting process, so it's about 2 weeks from going into full-time service. Vehicle maintenance still has a couple of minor things to do with the vehicle before it can be put into service. But a canine vehicle has a lot of specialized equipment and parts, so that upfitting process tends to take a lot longer than a normal patrol vehicle. But it's almost done, and Officer West and Aries can move into the new vehicle and get that moving. The February Officer of the Month was Adam Innocenti. Officer Innocenti is one of our school resource officers, and he's been with the department for a little over 17 years. He does a great job as a school resource officer, and generally every month they have lots of challenging reports that really involve a lot of sensitive handling. So, usually that's pretty par for the course as far as a school resource officer, having a lot of calls for service, having a lot of reports that are of that nature. What set Officer Innocenti apart for February is that he was a really important part of the bomb threat investigation at the high school, and just his overall professionalism in dealing with the school administration in an incident like that. He's very self-motivated, holds himself to a high standard. Just a great officer to have, and he's a huge asset for us. Any questions about those last items?
None for me.
No.
I do want to touch on the two high-profile cases that we've had over the past few weeks. The bomb threat at the high school on March 2nd. Kind of an unusual incident, even though these happen every couple of years. It's still a large-scale incident because it involves a ton of people, lots of resources, a lot of interdepartmental cooperation between different entities. This particular bomb threat, everything went pretty smoothly overall. Really good teamwork between the patrol division, the detective bureau, the school resource officers, and particularly the school administration. The suspect was identified within about 2 to 3 hours after the call, and he was taken into custody by about 7 o'clock that evening. He's since been charged with 2 counts of inducing panic and 1 count of disorderly conduct, and he's currently at the Juvenile Detention Center in Medina. So this was the first large-scale incident that we've had up there since the Wadsworth Intermediate School was built. And it gave us a really good opportunity to see how the schools handled their emergency operations plan among the 3 buildings. It just gives them a lot more resources to be able to move students to and just work with that larger footprint. So it was really interesting to see how much of an advantage that was for us and for the school officials in being able to get the students arranged as needed. The police department did a debrief with the involved officers last week, and we'll meet with the school soon to review the bomb threat and how we can improve on future incidents. So we're looking forward to that. We learned a lot from what we can do during an incident like that, and as always, our relationship with the school is really strong, and they're always willing to take suggestions from our perspective and how to improve the security with those types of events. The second incident that I wanted to touch on was the Minute Mart robbery and the subsequent vehicle pursuit, which happened on March 6th. Great teamwork between our patrol division and detective bureau, which really is the standard that we have at the department. Everybody always works really well together, especially during incidents like that. As with most of our major investigations, we utilize the city's technology infrastructure, including the flock cameras and the city's traffic cameras. The investigation is still ongoing, but earlier this week, the suspect was indicted for aggravated robbery, kidnapping, and failure to comply, which is the charge that's appropriate for the vehicle pursuit.
Okay.
Any questions?
None for me.
No, none.
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay.
Well done.
Chief Lunder, we'll go ahead and move into fire and EMS.
All right. On our first page, our fire department numbers. So we had a total of 27 fire calls for the month. That gave us a year-to-date of 67, which is 42% above where we were in 2025. We had 22 of those were within the city, 5 in the township. Looking at our firefighters on duty and recall, on duty at the station, we just had over 5. For those fire calls, firefighter recall coming back to the station, just over 2. So that gave us our total firefighter turnout of just about 7.5. That's about an 8% decrease of where we were this time in 2025. Looking at the other statistics and the hospital transports, looking at those, they're almost pretty close to where we were this time in 2025. So I didn't see anything that popped out as concerning. Looking at our EMS numbers for the month, in the city, we had a total of 249, 19 in the township, so that gave us a total of 271. There was 2 mutual aids, where we provided mutual aid. So we had a total year-to-date so far of 564, which looking at the previous year is a 6% increase. Total calls for service, so this is both fire and EMS, we are at, for the end of February, 656, and that's a 7% increase of where we were in 2025, which 2025 was a record year for us. So we're seeing an increase on top of an increase. Any questions on the first page?
I guess the question that I have is, like you said, it's a 7% increase over where we were at last year, which was, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but that was 609 versus 544. So at what point do conversations, when are you starting to get extremely concerned with where we are at versus calls for service?
Staffing is always a concern. The pace that we're going right now, yes, I anticipate, and I think we may get into it later with future talks on the future levies, we are going to have to get additional staffing for the additional calls. Quite honestly, we're seeing a lot of times we have 3 ambulances out all at once within the city. Some of that, they could be in the cities, they could be out at Akron or Barberton out of the hospital, but they are treating or transporting at the time. So we're seeing that increase. So additional staffing, I think, will have to be discussed and looked at for the future levies that the city does.
Equipment as well, like additional.
We have 4 ambulances.
Okay.
So if we have the additional staffing, usually our average staffing at the station, it can vary anywhere from 5 to, we do have 1 shift that we can go up to 8. So if we had technically 8 people working, that would give us 4 ambulances. But then again, a fire call could interrupt all of that. So whatever call comes in first, we're going to dedicate the staffing for that call. So if a fire call came in, all 8 are gone, and now all of a sudden we get additional EMS calls, we're going to have to use our mutual aid partners to help out with those calls.
Mr. Yurchek, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I know when we get through the annual report, that was one of the pages that I had flagged. If you look at the 10-year history of the department, it averages out to about a 5% increase in calls every year. If we continue that pace, which I think there's some factors that would lead into us confidently saying that we are likely to continue that pace, 5 years from now, we'd be 30% over where we are right now. And so that was something I planned on highlighting, and I think as we get into later down on the agenda with levies, billing, and other sources of revenue for fire and EMS, it's just an important background to have and something to keep in mind as we have those discussions, because that needs to shape and impact what decisions we make.
When's the last time that do you know when we had a manpower increase?
For full-time staffing, 2 years ago, if I recall.
Was it 2?
I think is when we got the last 16th full-timer. I think it was 2 years ago. I'd have to double check.
And do you recall, I imagine, obviously I was on the committee, but I don't quite recall exactly, but I would think that's somewhat driven by these percentages as to, so maybe it'd be interesting to go, you might know it off the top of your head, but it might be interesting to go back prior to that. Last time we added, the 2 full-time, what was the percentage increase that was driving that decision?
Yeah, a lot of it is call volume, is
Yeah.
what drives it. Call volumes, and then if we look at the firefighter recall, not getting members to either come back or not enough to handle the calls, or also fill the station fills. So there's that balancing act between full-time and part-time to fill the station. If we're not getting enough hours from the part-timers, you know, the only other option is full-time. So, and we've seen this across the board, and actually I just sent something recently talking about the volunteer fire service, a lot of changes that have happened. This is throughout the United States, is we're not getting those volunteers, so these smaller, almost everybody, smaller departments included, are having to hire full-time. So, you know, most of the small communities around us never had full-time, and now they do. They're still a combination department just like us, full-time and part-time, but we're seeing that across the United States.
Okay. Okay, definitely something to keep an eye on.
Second page, just to highlight some of the training that we did. February, depending on how it is with ice and weather, we actually got to get out our ice rescue suits and go out on Memorial Pond and do our practice, which it's actually, if you've ever done it, it's pretty fun. You wouldn't think getting in the ice water, but the suits actually do a really good job keeping you warm and dry. So we did our practice in case we ever have to do any type of rescue on that. It's always weather dependent. A lot of times we'll try to do this in February. But it all depends if there is enough ice and it's thick enough. This year with all the cold temperatures, we had no issues with ice. So that was one of the big trainings that we got to participate in. Outside training in November of 2025, the Ohio Fire Code, which is mostly what the fire departments deal with, doing inspections, building new buildings. That was updated, and one of the requirements with that is all fire inspectors have to attend an update. So there was 5 of us that were able to participate in one of the update classes. There'll be additional ones coming in for the other inspectors. So that was done. And then Josh Heller, our 16th full-timer, he was technically started in January, but his swearing in was on the 2nd of February. So that was another event that we had. And that completes just the monthly report. Any questions?
Just one quick question, just out of curiosity. When you guys are doing a training event, like the ice rescue, are you posting that on social media, letting people know? And then also, are you putting up signage at it so you're not getting people that are like, oh my gosh, this is, you know.
Yeah, we do have some signage, you know, training in progress going on. And yeah, we do try to put that out in social media that we participated in that, especially these types of trainings where the public can get to see what we're doing. They actually like that. So we get a good following on the social media for that.
I saw that on social media.
Yeah. So there's 2. We did one was our evening class. So the one on the left is darker, and then the following morning we participated. We did the mayor and the safety director stopped out in the morning. We tried to get them in the suits, but they did not want to participate.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe next year. Polar plunge.
A strange question, but in recent history, have you had to actually rescue anyone down there?
Not a human, animals, yes.
Yeah.
Which, you know, some people ask, well, why are you going out for an animal? Basically what it comes down to is if you don't do that, there is going to be somebody that is going to try to rescue the animal. So then, you know, we have done one. Yes, there was one actually prior to this training, I think a month before, we had to get a dog out of the water.
Wow.
So, dog was fine. They would rescue that.
Okay, thank you for the report. All right, we'll go ahead and move into staffing updates.
Oh, Chief, do you want to give an overview of the annual
Oh, yeah,
report?
sorry, I missed that.
Oh, that's fine. All right, so early this morning, I think the annual report was sent out. I know Mr. Yurchek, you're familiar with this, our style. Not much has really changed. I was just going to highlight just a couple things that, A, we wouldn't normally see on the monthly, or just items that jumped out on that. So feel free, if I don't cover something that you saw earlier that you want me to cover, I'm happy to do that. Or after today, if you see something, please let me know and I can address it by email or at the next meeting. So if we would look on page 5 of the annual report. So this is the trend. So this is total calls for service by each of the years. This is both fire and EMS. So yes, if you would look, the trend is rising, continues to go up. We do have a couple little blips that usually it might settle for a couple years or be pretty close, and then we have a jump up. I know the first major jump that we saw was right after COVID. We had an increase there, and then again, like I said, last year 2025 was an 8% increase over the previous year. So the trend continues to show our call volume going up. Then the next 2 pages, it just breaks down to all the incident summaries, the different types of calls that we're going on to. Again, the majority is going to be EMS calls, but some of the vegetation fires, forest, brush, grass mixtures, usually in the summertime. We may have some gas leaks. It just identifies each call that we would go on. Then if we would look on page 8, so this is our looking at our 10-year trend summary, which is kind of nice. In the monthly reports, you just get the previous year. This usually will have 10-year trends. So if you look at on the fire, for the most part, you don't see the big increase as what we're going to look at later in the EMS. If you would look at the past 5 years, our roughly average is about 300 calls per year in the past 5 years on that one. So no real big fluctuations. We did have 121 to 22. It jumped up a little bit. Below that is the breakdown from the city and the township calls. Again, most of the township calls that if you look at in the past 5 years, averages roughly around 60. So pretty consistent on the fire side for our trends. The next item we wanted to go to that you're going to look at that may jump out to you is on page 15. So in 15 is our inspection activity. You have seen the decline on that. So for those watching or other members that may not be familiar, our on-duty staff are also full-timers, are also fire inspectors. We try to do those inspections on shift. So as you can see, when you see this going down, and I'm going to show you our call volumes going up, it's just making it difficult for the full-time staff on duty to do inspections when our call volumes are going up. But there is a trend, and I just want to address that. We continue to look at ways of trying to increase those numbers, and I'm happy to report it worked out. We did have one member on light duty in January, so if you would go back and look at our inspection numbers, year to date, we're already at 105, so that we're already halfway over where we were for all of last year. So having that member, during the week, light duty, it was able to get a lot of inspections done, which was a good thing.
When you go back to like 2016, did we have a dedicated fire inspector?
No. So if you would go back previous, our call volume was not as high as what it is now. Also, we had, fairly some of those numbers, I think more senior full-timers that had the experience could probably do inspections a lot quicker on that. I know if you would go back even farther, the numbers, like I said, at one point when I was full-time and then Bureau, we were doing about 1,300 inspections. So they've just dwindled. New staff, it takes them, you know, they have up to a year. Now it's 18 months to become an inspector. So new full-time staff, as they come on, not everybody's an inspector. We have to send them to school. They have to usually go with somebody else to get trained, like almost similar to an FDO process on that. So that could have been some of the reason for 2016. All right, next thing I just wanted to highlight on page 17, this is our EMS 10-year total call summary. So looking at that, now this one you can see more of a demarcation line where this is, we continue to see a trend going up on the EMS calls, whereas on the fire, we didn't really see a major trend as we do in the EMS. And then on the bottom, it breaks it down from the city and the township. Again, still township, slight increase the past 5 years. And then with the city, within the calls within the city, still slight increase.
This is the chart I was just referring to. If you average out those increases over the 10-year period, it works out to a 5% annual average increase. The difference from 25 to 2016 is a 55% increase. If you compare that with fire, the average annual increase is about 3%. So as Chief mentioned, it's relatively flat. There's not a lot of growth there. But on this EMS side, it's averaging out to about 5% a year. If you forecasted that another 5 years ahead, we'd be 29% higher than we are now.
If you add them together, it's probably more 6-ish or, you know. You don't have a chart that shows that compares them total call, like fire and EMS together like this?
It would be on the...
It was 5 years, I think.
We did that, well, actually, I think I have 6. It was that first one on page 5.
Okay.
That is both fire and EMS. So I went back to
Oh, there we
2019
go.
on that one.
Okay.
And then
It'd be interesting to throw what our authorized strength level and full-time people were in those years.
Yeah, I can pull that.
The data's great. It's trying to explain the data all together so you see the
Well,
picture.
well, and I think to explain what we see on 17 with the EMS increase, a new one that we put in the annual report, but not on the monthly. On page 21, is the bottom of that is incidents by patient's age. So this gives us a snapshot of all the calls that we're responding to for EMS. What's our age group on this? And if you look, you know, basically it's a 69% of our EMS calls, they are over the age of 60. So what we're seeing, and to try to explain this, and as I think the safety director has mentioned before, their county did a look at the future of the county and where it stands and population increase on that. I think we're going to continue to see this trend, but we're in the baby boomer stage. So we have a huge geriatric population. And with that, with the medical calls that we're seeing, these are the patients, that's who we're going on, the majority. So for 2025, it was 69% above the age of 60. So I think until we get out of that baby boomer stage age population, we're going to continue to see this. If the population does increase, like the county's talking, whether it's Wadsworth or in the county, I think the county as a whole, all fire departments are going to continue to see this trend and see an increase on that. So with that, I think if you correlate this along with the EMS call volumes, that kind of explains why we're seeing the increase in EMS. There are some other factors in that, but that is definitely one of the major factors.
If you're not familiar, the county commissioners did do a demographic study. It's on the county commissioners website. They hired an economist to do a 25-year projection for the county. While it is countywide, I think a lot of the trends probably lend themselves very well to Wadsworth and our conditions here. And I think that projected over that period of time an 8% growth in population. But when you break down the populations by ages, you're going to see a lot of growth in the senior population with some reduction in the 18 and under and even some reductions in labor forces potentially. So I think our current data plus that going forward relates to all of our discussions later in terms of levies, township contracts, billing, and those things.
Okay, thank you.
And then in the back of, we do, everybody thinks it's fire and EMS, just a lot of, just responding to calls. But on page 28, just talks about our, always like to identify the public safety education. We have the safety town, but our crews, when not on calls, doing inspections, we do a lot of public safety education. I know our Assistant Chief Potter, he does a ton of public safety education, which is good. We always try to prevent the fire, educate the public. So this talks about some of the public safety education, and the next two, page 29, that just kind of gives you a breakdown of some of the programs that we did, where they did, and the educators who participated. So there's almost 2 different pages of us doing some type of public safety education. So we try to do a lot. If you look in May is always busy. We do a lot of tours for the schools, but there's all kinds of different programs. So I always think that's a good thing, trying to educate the community prior to some type of incident happening, make sure they know what to do.
When you guys are doing CPR training, is the training that you're providing, are they becoming certified in CPR?
Yes, we do AHA. We provide AHA certification for them. They will get a card that is for 2 years.
2 years.
And then that pretty
And
much.
do they reach out for that? Is that
They do.
is that
So
kinda
we have it
how
on
you-
social media. They will call. We try to, have a group of at least 6 to do that. So we can put people on a waiting list. If only one person calls in, get on a waiting list. And then if we can get a group of people, we'll do that. Sometimes, if somebody's in a big hurry that has to have it for whatever their job, and we can accommodate it, we'll try to do that. But.
Okay.
And that's the majority. There's a lot of information here, a lot of this that you'll see, you see on a monthly, but to see it on a 10-year trend kind of gives you maybe a different snapshot of the department on that. I just wanted to highlight some of the major trends, things that I saw, make you aware of. Feel free, again, as I said, if you dive into this further, have any questions, please feel free, reach out, or the next safety committee we can discuss as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Spend some time going through that, so.
And then next month, we'll have the police report, and we can go over that as well, too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move into staffing updates.
Sure. Staffing updates. So PD is currently authorized strength at 34. Current staffing is 32. We do have a new officer that is starting in April. And then we do have candidates that are still on an existing list. So we're going to start interviews on those later in March. Depending on how that goes, then we would likely turn around and do a civil service exam if we don't have any candidates there.
How many people are left on the list that you have, do you know?
We're hoping to bring back about 10, but because there's been a little bit of time since the last test,
They may have found something.
they may have found something else in the meantime. So, in terms of fire EMS, still authorized at 16 and current staffing at 16 and part-time members at 30. Dispatch authorized overall for 11, but in 2026, 10. Current staffing is at 8. We had one dispatcher who began her FTO on Monday, and then we still have an additional candidate in the background process. We are planning a civil service test in May. You may ask, that seems like it's a couple months away, why would you delay that? Our last couple tests, I would say, have not been successful in drawing large numbers of individuals, so this test is intentionally timed with area graduations, specifically the 4-district compact. They have a dispatcher program there, so we're hoping to time that out and see if we can see an increase in overall test results and candidates. So that has intentionally been pushed off for a couple months, and that's the strategy.
What is the strategy when you've got, since we're at authorized strength level of 16 on fire and EMS, what's the strategy for new hire there? Like, so are you just strictly looking at possible retirements, or when do you kind of start the process for that? I mean, it's probably somewhat of a guessing game, right?
In terms of full-time members, or, I mean, as of right now, I mean, we would accept and will probably likely refresh sort of part-time applications. I think one of the issues we talked about, and I want to make sure we say the part-time members are absolutely crucial to the department running and functioning at the level that it does with our current budget. You know, they provide the same exact service that the full-time members do when they're there, so I just want to make sure that that's out there. They are a critical component of the department. But that market is difficult because a lot of times part-time members, they may have full-time positions at other, whether it's departments or completely different careers that make their availability hard. Or if you have firefighters that are working multiple part-time jobs while they're waiting to maybe get on full-time somewhere, those conflicting schedules and commitments also weigh in on when they can be available as well too. I will say while bringing on a part-time member, while you're not looking at maybe the overall personnel costs that you would with a full-time member, there's still equipment costs associated with those members as well too. So it's there are still some costs there. So right now I think we would certainly look towards additional part-time members. The full-time discussion, those are all part and parcel related to our levies primarily. EMS, and we'll get to it a little bit later because I thought this would be something worth going over sooner than later, is what is the funding structure for fire, EMS, and those agencies. And a big component of that is levy funding. We'll also get into EMS. We also bill patients that we service on EMS. And we also have a contract with our township. And so those are our three sources of revenue. On the fire side, we do have general funds committed to that. But really big picture on the EMS side, which is roughly 75 to 80% of covering all of those full-time member salaries, that's where that discussion has to happen, because we can't commit to additional resources in terms of staffing unless we have the revenue to back that up.
When we go out for a full-time position, do we usually get a good amount of people that apply for that position that are part-timers in the department?
For the full-time, not like it was when I got on 30 years ago. The average, what we've been seeing, is about 15 to 20 is what we're seeing. There's a huge demand throughout the state. Every day I'm seeing departments that are hiring. So I think the demand is out there, and we don't have just enough people wanting to go into this career on that. So we don't see the big numbers that we used to. We're about 15 to 20, 25 is the average what we'll see for a new hire or applications.
But how many of them are coming from our part-time?
Very few. So we do have certain requirements. Age is usually a big one. We have hired, actually, the last 2 hires were from our part-time.
Okay.
So some of the part-timers that we have are full-time at another department, and they're happy there, so they don't hire. But the actual last 2 full-timers that were sworn in, or not the last 2, but we've had 2 part-timers within the past year.
Okay. Okay, any other questions on staffing? All right, we'll go ahead and move into the Marks Tower project update.
Brief update tonight, nothing major to speak of, still working on a lot of what I would refer to as the behind the scenes or the regulatory type things. So No major shifts there, but also no major problems, so not much to report tonight on that.
Okay. 179 Grandview?
Less good news. It does have asbestos, and the asbestos does need to be remediated before it can come down. Our code enforcement officer, Caruso, is in the process of gathering quotes for that asbestos work, but I will tell you that all of the quotes that have come in so far have all said that in order to successfully remediate the asbestos inside, they're going to need the interior of the home cleared out. So we're also exploring quotes to see what that would look like as well, too. So certainly a time increase for both of those things and likely a cost increase for both of those things.
Okay. All right. I'll just go ahead and move into items for discussion, and I guess you can just go one by one.
Sure. So the first one, again, we don't have to get into a very detailed or in-depth discussion tonight. We had mentioned at our last meeting that a few years back, we had explored changing our removal of snow and ice ordinance. This is the draft copy of what that was at the time, so I'm essentially just providing it to the committee today to take a look and review. See if there's things in here that you like, you don't like, or if you'd like to go in an entirely different direction, that's fine too. I just thought this might be a good starting point since our current one is so limited. One of the things that I would speak to on this is there is, I think it's section E, is after the 48 hours that was referenced, and there's been a determination of a violation that the city may remove or cause to be removed the accumulated snow, ice debris on the sidewalk. I will tell you we've done some cursory investigation with snow and ice removal companies to see if this is something that they would even be interested in or that we might be successful in finding a vendor that was able to do this. I would just generally tell the committee that this did not seem to be a popular service that they were looking to provide, and I think we might actually struggle to execute that portion of this particular draft. So I would just highlight that as that might be something Mr. Yurchak has said before. We don't want to necessarily create an ordinance that we can't actually engage in or enforce. So I would just note that for the committee, that as you read through that and consider that, that is something that we may have to come up with a better solution or workaround for, because I don't know that we're actually going to be able to do that. If there's any specific questions on that or ideas that you had, happy to discuss, take some notes on, or do some additional research, but just wanted to keep that discussion going and provide sort of a draft for a jumping off point on that discussion.
Okay.
Usually a fine.
Yeah, and that was, I think, as a result of that, I think it was a $250 administrative fee. I think when we worked on this initially, and again, I was chief at the time, so not directly involved in the discussion, but if I remember some of the committee discussions correctly, a lot of time was spent and focused on, I think rightfully so, is that what are we doing to actually change the problem, right? If we just find somebody and the snow still sits on the sidewalk, well, kids still have to walk in the street to get to school or wherever they're going. People still can't walk their dogs on the sidewalk. Elderly can't still walk on the sidewalk. So we've effectively not done anything to actually change those circumstances. And I think that is certainly something that we should consider. I would just say that, you know, currently at the city with our staffing and streets and their attention and focus having to be on the roadways, internally we're not going to have the staff to do this. And from some initial phone calls and follow-ups, it sounds like we're not going to be able to find a vendor to do that either. So we might find ourselves just sitting in the position of, well, fines might be our best option to encourage behavioral change.
Okay, well, we'll continue to review that, and I guess leave it on the agenda, but, yeah, I mean, I think the only way you're going to get a vendor to do it is it's going to be after the snowstorm. They've done all the accounts they currently handle, and you're going to be 2 days after the snow event before you're removing any snow.
And depending on weather, it may have self-corrected.
Correct.
So, and I don't think we want to book them to come out for something that has self-corrected in the meantime, too. So,
Yeah, I think with snow plow companies, the hardest crew to find is the sidewalk crew. Mm-hmm. The manual labor. They don't struggle quite as much putting someone in a truck with a plow, but.
So the next item up, and then we've made several references so far, is just an overall discussion on our levies EMS billing and township contracts, I think as we continue to have really any discussion as it relates to whether it's staffing or just budgets in general, I want the committee to be well aware of the different funding sources and how those work. So if I get too far into the weeds, please tell me to stop and come back for air. But I just want to make sure, and if you have questions along the way, please feel free to interrupt. So the first one I'll start with is the township contract. A good reason to bring this up is because this is going to need to be renewed this year. So at some point this year, we will enter in negotiations with the township. We are contracted to provide fire and EMS services in Wadsworth Township. And the contract is set up, there's really two main points. Each year, and I can give you the amounts, they've been on an increasing scale of what they are paying the city. The second component of that is that the township contract allows for, I guess what I would call a discount or a credit. So we do bill for all our EMS runs. I'll get into, there's a difference between hard billing and soft billing. We hard bill patients that we transport or treat. The township contract gives them an 80% credit on any funds we would collect from township residents. So in 2022, the contract was over $477,000. 23 was $492,000. 24 was $506,000. 25 is $522,000, and this year it's $537,000. Those are the starting numbers. We do quarterly billing, and then on those starting numbers, they would get an 80% credit for any township resident that we billed and received funds for. So that's the township contract component. We do have control internally over where those funds are directed, but that is one very important part of fire and EMS funding. Second one I'll touch on is EMS billing, and like I said, sort of maybe an important point is the difference between hard billing and soft billing. And by that, I mean hard billing is a bill that's sent and there are actual efforts to collect those funds. And so you will see a lot of agencies in our area that may have higher billing rates than we do, but a lot of those same agencies are also engaged in soft billing. So they're sent to insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, whatever's received from those insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid, that's what they get, but they're not actually taking the extra effort of actually trying to recover those costs. Again, we are on the hard billing model. And that is actually set by city ordinance. It's 3238, it's ambulance services and EMS. And just a quick rundown, it's broken down by city residents and non-residents. City residents are less because those city residents are paying the EMS levy. So for ALS2, that is $565, ALS1, $465, BLS is $400, and a non-transport is $200. And there's also a cost for mileage, which is $14 for miles. Those were all for the city residents. Non-residents, that ALS2 goes from $565 to $900. ALS1 goes from $465 to $800. Basic life support from $400 to $650, and a non-transport is still $200, and the mileage rate for non-residents is $16 a mile. So another important thing to consider in that is that so we work with a billing and collections company called LifeForce. They've been a partner with us here at the city for many, many years, and they, I would say, do a very good job. They are a local company. The ownership is local. We have annual meetings with them. We can pick up the phone, send them an email, and get a really good response. They are also what I would call the preferred vendor for a number of agencies in our area as well, too. So they're going to get all of the billing, and then they're going to send it to the insurance company if it's on file, or the individual themselves to then direct to their insurance company and make payment. So an important component of this, we just talked a lot about the ages of the individuals that are involved. And so we're going to see a lot from Medicare and even Medicaid. And Medicare and Medicaid have their own rates that are often less than what we're billing. And so that means in those instances, we're only ever going to see what those rates are. So for example, the ALS 2, that's $586 reimbursement rate from Medicare. ALS is $405 for Medicare. BLS is $341, and they only reimburse at $731 a mile. You're going to have a similar experience, although higher, in the private insurance world. Those rates, reimbursement rates, are generally higher. But often, if you're familiar with dealing with insurance, what insurance is willing to pay is what you're going to get. Individual citizens do get charged if there's a deductible, if there's a copay. They are getting those bills, and those bills are being collected. And so Life Force, on our behalf, they're attempting multiple follow-ups, sending letters, making phone calls, doing skip tracing, collections letters. They will put people on payment plans, but they are also screening out and making hardship determinations as well too. So if they're just on Social Security, they're going to be screened out as a hardship case. If Life Force is unsuccessful in making collections, then we currently have a contract with the Ohio Attorney General's office, and the Ohio Attorney General's office will seek collection on our behalf. And so the Ohio Attorney General has the ability to take that from taxes, lottery winnings, and casino gambling winnings, but also receiving a letter on behalf of the Ohio Attorney General is probably good motivation in terms of clearing up that debt that's owed. So that is the process. I think that's an important discussion, one that you know what's happening behind the scenes and what we're doing to collect on these fees, because they do play a big part in our budget. As an example, in 2025, we billed out over $1.6 million, and we took receipt on just over $1 million. I would say that it's important to note that that received is just an ongoing. So maybe what's coming in January and February is likely from 2025, and I would say we certainly have not collected on all that, made all the possible collections we have on 2025's bills, because, well, Life Force is going to spend quite a bit of time trying to track those individuals down, and then it's going to get sent to the Attorney General's office, which is all going to take a decent amount of time. So that's what's going on.
What does the Life Force do? Do they take a percentage of what they collect?
7%.
7%? So in that scenario, they took 7% of the 1 million that came in.
And then they give us that credit back if it's sent to the Attorney General. So they would be a part of getting the collection sent back to them and us, but in that instance, they take 7% off. We get a 7% credit because they weren't ultimately the ones that got the funds to come in. And the Attorney General, when they do their collections, they attach their own fees, so that's part and parcel separate from what we're doing.
And then when they are unsuccessful or they determine a hardship, is that written off every year?
Yeah, so when we get our reports from them, we will see what's billed on a monthly basis. We'll see what's received on a monthly basis. We'll see what's been written off on a monthly basis. And then there's also some additional individual debits, which is usually a very small percentage. But so, yeah, we will see that in real time, what's happening.
And is there an overriding audit committee that Life Force has to answer to, or?
They do. They get audited, and I would also tell the committee that our last 2 meetings with Life Force, Auditor Fix from representing the city has been involved in those meetings so that she can become familiar and comfortable with the controls and things that they have in place. But yes, Life Force is subject to their own independent auditing as well. I think, Chief, do you remember was it 24 that the last time the rates were increased?
Yes, well, they finally, I think they got approved in 24, but it didn't happen until February of 2025 is when the first bills with the new change came about.
And that's something, it's always a balancing act, right? I mean, we want to be fair, especially to our residents. And so I think historically there have not been very many increases. And if there's been talk, we generally try to hold off for as long as we can, because again, our residents are going to feel that as well too. So we want to have that balancing act. It is certainly an important component of funding the fire and EMS services, but we also want to take care of the residents as well too. And then so the other 2 income sources for fire and EMS, we have a fire levy I would note for the committee that that fire levy is currently only capital and equipment. It does not and cannot cover costs for personnel expenses. It's currently a 1.5 mil levy. EMS, that levy is different. So on the EMS side of things, and as we review future budgets, it's important to know that EMS is not taking anything from the general fund. Fire does have an account in the general fund that's funding the fire portion of the personnel. So if you think of one employee, when you look at these reports, they're doing primarily EMS work, so that EMS levy is covering a majority of their salary, and then the remainder of that for the fire side is coming out from general fund. As though the fire levy is structured right now, we cannot cover any personnel expenses out of the fire levy. On the EMS side, that's not the case, so the EMS levy is covering capital, equipment, personnel, all of that, and that's currently at a 3 mil levy. And then additionally on the EMS side, you have the billing that comes in, and for both fire and EMS, we have the township contract. A lot of information. If you have questions on any of those things, or if you think of questions as you think about it for tonight, a couple days later, please don't hesitate to reach out, because as we said towards the beginning of the meeting, all of these things are very interrelated in terms of whether it's adding another full-time fire EMS personnel. Well, all of that has got to come back to these numbers and ensuring that we have the funds to cover that before we make that decision. And that decision relates directly to our future levy discussions and what we want to do with those and what that looks like.
Okay. Would it be possible for you to kind of summarize the numbers that you just went over and send them out to the committee?
Absolutely.
I
Yep.
probably retained a small percentage of the numbers.
I'd blame
that you
the
rattled
presenter.
off. Yeah. I think it said you only retain like 10% of what you hear out loud, so.
Yeah, but I'd be happy to type up sort of the notes that I made myself to
Yeah.
go over and share those so that you have them.
Okay, any initial questions there? Okay.
All right, next, C, fireworks. You're probably both familiar. Last year, there was some significant cuts made to the budget in order to reach a threshold to have that budget passed. One of the items that was not included in this year's budget was funding for the July 4th fireworks. I would say that as somebody that's at least been down there on the police side for the last several years, I think that's a very important event for our community, especially this year with it being the 250th anniversary of our country. And I would say also in light of the potential downtown infrastructure improvement project, I know that that is certainly going to have impacts on residents and businesses. And I would say that by some estimates, 15,000 people being in the square for the fireworks is probably a good thing for those businesses, bars, restaurants, even the shops. So I would like to bring up tonight for the committee's discussion, I think that's an event that's important. I think it's an event that we should still fund. And so wanted to bring that discussion. We will likely in April have to seek out a vendor for fireworks. And so if we're going to do that, and again, we can talk and I can give you, I think last year, the number that was budgeted was around $25,000 for fireworks. I know in the past we've also sought out actual donations as well too. I would tell you they do not cover the vast majority of it. It's probably anywhere from a couple thousand to $4,000 that people have donated to make that show happen. But again, I think it's an important one. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not too terribly huge of an ask, but wanted to put that on the committee's agenda, obviously get your feedback, get your input, but ultimately if it was something that the committee was interested in pursuing, then tomorrow I could talk to the law director and finance about actually putting supplemental appropriation legislation for next week's council meeting so that we could get those funds secured. And then if so, I could seek out a vendor in April and get that event secured.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is that we should seek out a supplemental appropriation. I think
I
that
agree.
I think that the cuts that we made towards the end of last year's budget season were, all of them, I don't know that we had a firm grasp on exactly what was going to be cut in order to hit that number to, move forward with an approved budget. So I'm not surprised to hear that, here's a supplemental that we need to go after. And I think it's, important for all of the council to weigh in on it. It's an event that I just don't know how you don't do it.
Being the
So
250th anniversary.
every year.
Yeah.
I mean, the economic impact for the restaurants and the
And
businesses downtown
businesses.
during it is, plays into
Yeah.
that. So, I'm all for bringing that to all of council to discuss.
There's a lot of people that come from out of town as
I was going
well.
to say, there's a good dynamic of folks that come from out of town as well as in town. I do think it's legitimately a great event. I think
It's a good economic.
Are you comfortable with the amount that I'd suggested, which was just based on the last, I think, 2 years was about 25,000? Is that reasonable?
Yeah,
I'm fine
it's
with
the
that.
250th. I don't, if that was last
don't
year,
know-
my guess
I
is,
don't know
I have no
what
idea what
fireworks usually
fireworks
run, but-
cost, but
I'm going to go with
Admittedly,
your
this will be my first
recommendation.
rodeo with the fireworks,
Yeah,
so yeah.
so-
They can go a lot higher than this.
sure, I
Certain
imagine they
shows.
can.
Yeah, the bigger the shell increases, we are locked on how big of the shells that can actually shoot up because of the requirements of safety parameters, distances on that. But yeah, talking to vendors as I've worked with them, shows, yeah, they can get
They're all over it.
enormous, yes.
Yeah.
But I think in the past, our shows are pretty good.
I've heard
I'm-
wonderful things about our shows, and I've seen
Yeah.
our shows. They're good, so.
Yeah, obviously, if you're going to try to do it for next week's council meeting, it's very limited, but I wouldn't be opposed to the amount that you show on that to be based on, the research that you're able to do between now and then. And if it was 25K last year, my guess is they didn't go down in price, so I don't know that, that would be enough, but I don't know what that increase was, so I guess I would lean on you a little bit to.
Say, or even if we set it to not to, well, I guess if it's an appropriation, it's got to be a specific amount.
Yeah, so maybe through your research here in the next, 5 days?
5 days? Got it. But if it was somewhere in like it's 25 to 30, that would be
Yeah.
a number
Yeah.
that you're
Yeah.
both still comfortable
Sure,
with?
because I think it's going to lead to a discussion in general, and then, as long as you have data to kind of back up the number.
I think from the
I
past
think
ones,
it's-
there's been one vendor, we always put it out to multiple, but there's one that has consistently responded,
Yeah.
and I think basically at this point, wants to maintain that and make that a part of their regular business over the course of the summer. So maybe a quick phone call
And
to
don't we
them.
do things like we tack on to a vendor that's maybe doing a show on actually July 4th? And, I guess, what,
So we've always done them on the 3rd because they actually give us a discount.
that's what
We
it
don't
is,
have
the
to
3rd.
pay. There's so many people that want
That's it.
shows on the 4th that they're limited, and so they usually cost additional to do it on the 4th.
Gotcha.
So that's why we've in the past done it on the 3rd.
Okay, yeah, I knew there was something like that. While we're on that discussion, real quick, what is I think I've asked this before, but I need a refresher. So obviously, we're lighting these off from the cemetery. Who is going out and looking at, the trees continue to grow? Are we at risk of, at some point, not being able to light the fireworks off from that location?
The area that we do it at now, even if those encroach a little bit, I think we are still fine. The issue that we had at Memorial was people were planting trees, more trees were coming in, and it was a tight spot to begin with.
Okay.
That's where we had that issue. Where we set them off at the cemetery is kind of like their dumping grounds for soil, and
Yeah.
the trees are actually not an issue in that
So you're
location.
above them. So does the firework vendor come in and look at all that stuff so that they're not selling us fireworks that are not gonna, reach a certain point? I know you used to be able to see the fireworks from several spots within the city. You didn't necessarily have to be downtown, and it seems like anymore, you might see one or two that are making it high enough.
Part of the requirement is a site inspection to make sure that they have the clearance that they need for the type of shells and to see on those trees. When they provide their permit, that will actually be in their permit, a picture of the site. It's all mapped out of the dimensions of how far the shells will go.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Then the last question, Ms. Hines had a resident reach out to her, and I won't use any specific address information, but it was more of a complicated one than I think you might think on the surface, and was just kind of a good example. So there was a resident that had parked a trailer in their backyard next to their shed. Another resident could see that trailer outside of their back window in their backyard, and that's essentially what triggered the complaint. I would tell you from looking at it from a code enforcement perspective, that code is written to say that you can't have it parked in your front or side yards. This was very clearly in the backyard.
Clearly in the backyard.
There are actual definitions for front, side, and backyard in the zoning code that would lay that out, but based on some items within the zoning code, that would lead you to believe that that in fact does, even though it is in the backyard, still be required or need to be on a concrete pad or gravel pad. And that would be something that they would have to approve so that it could go there. I will say the ultimate solution to this is going to be, if they do put a pad there, is that the trailer is still going to be there and be visible. So there might not be any structural change in that situation whatsoever, as long as it's on an approved pad. Or the flip side is they move that trailer to their driveway and then probably get grief from the other neighbors that can now view it in the driveway rather than the backyard. But it was an interesting one to look through and research, and one that, like I said, I think was a little more complicated than what it would appear on the surface, because you're referencing zoning codes, the code enforcement section, and all the way around to finally come up with a quote-unquote solution, albeit the solution could be that it still stays in the exact same spot and nothing actually changes other than it's on a pad.
Difficult, because I know all parties involved. And I like all parties involved. But you can see the homeowner is on a cul-de-sac. Mm-hmm. And you can see the trailer from another road, the other street.
Yep.
And it
The only
would be
time you
really
get
nice if,
double frontage is if you live on a corner, and then you get front and front,
Yeah.
and
It
that
would be
changes
really
your, yes.
nice if the homeowner would maybe put up some shrubs or a couple panels of fencing just
Either
to
way,
hide it.
either individual could throw up some shrubs and screen that out. But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I know there was an email exchange about that earlier, and I
But
put that on the notes.
I mean, like I said, I know everybody involved. I like everybody. I was just trying to get the law. Like, what is the law?
Yep.
So I could,
and
be,
yes.
this is what you have to do, because I don't want to pick sides. I don't want to cause a problem. I just want to do what's right. But I can see everybody's perspective.
Sure.
So you were saying the backyard could be considered the way it's currently written?
No, so
To need a
it
pad?
is the backyard.
Right.
So you can't have it, according to the code enforcement side of things, you can't have a vehicle or trailer in your front yard or your side yard unless it's on a driveway pad or gravel pad. So when code enforcement officer Caruso and I had examined it, that was sort of where we came out and said, okay, well, it's in the backyard, so he's out of it from our perspective. But then talking to zoning and Jeff Kaiser, he provided some additional historical context and said that no, even in this case, zoning would require that this has to be there. So I know Officer Caruso had sent a letter already to the individual, and we'll have some additional follow-up with them just to say, okay, hey, final answer based on both the zoning code and the property enforcement code here. This is what we'll need to do. You can either move it to the front,
over to
you can
the
either move it over to the
administration.
driveway and it's fine, or you just have to put a gravel or concrete pad next to your shed within the zoning parameters, and then you can put it back on that.
So wouldn't it make sense to update the enforcement code to reflect what the zoning code would require? So once again, you at least have some level of
Consistency.
enforcement. You know, not that he's going to go out, like you said, we don't have the manpower to go out and look for it, but at least when the situation does arise, you've got an answer, because right now they're not jiving. So might be something Brad's got to weigh in on, but it probably makes some sense to at least make a match, whether, you know, there's a conversation about whether it's right or not.
Right.
You know, now you're probably bringing in Jeff and Mr. Davis, because now we're talking about zoning codes, but
I mean,
More
if
zoning.
you could get that solved before the fireworks, that
Yeah.
would be, you know,
Where's it on the priority list? Fireworks first or?
Yeah, I know Mr. Davis has been doing a lot of great work trying to make some of these things match and jive, and this is probably just another example of, you know, it's a whole nother discussion of what it should be, but right now, if this is what we're working in, they should probably match.
Yep, that's a good point.
he did a nice job hiding it from the people in the front.
On the cul-de-sac,
side,
absolutely, yes, they're probably
On
happy.
his cul-de-sac, but the people on the street behind him can clearly see it, and
Yeah, I do know.
it's very visible,
Yeah,
and
I had a situation, and I spoke to Mr. Kaiser about, is there, you know, we occasionally get complaints from residents that, you know, they're on their back porch and it's a back-to-back house, and people have, you know, they're doing what they think they need to do by moving it off the front or side yard, but they're stacking stuff out back, and Jeff's like, no, they can't do that. That still can be enforced, so you can't just, you know, it's out of sight if you drive by, but now someone enjoying dinner on their back porch is looking at stuff.
it's hard when it's your property, and,
So,
yeah.
okay.
I'll leave that up to the administration and the law.
Maybe we just leave that one on the agenda so you can update us next month and maybe have a conversation with whoever about making those match. I don't.
But thank you for looking into this.
Yep, you bet.
Okay. Anything from the administration? Anything from council?
No.
Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second, we are adjourned.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.